strong proponent of vocational education. That should be a part of every child's curriculum so that when you graduate, they graduate with ready for college, but also with skills that they can take into the workforce if they decide that they don't want to go to college or they want to be able to pay for college. Sure. Also, we have to make sure that our schools, public neighborhood schools, are adequately and equitably funded. So it shouldn't be that by virtue of where you live determines the quality of the education that you're going to get. You should be able to get a high quality education no matter what neighborhood that you live in. So these are just some of the things that we would do immediately. When we talk about a focus on good education policy and practice, and that means not over testing our kids. We spend far too much time testing our kids, and we know that that's not good education policy and practice. So we have to move away from education reform trends and this privatization trend that the current administration has put in place and get back to what actually works for the children and making sure that we're making investments so that our outcomes are solid outcomes so that our kids have a future.
That's good. That's good. There seems to be a divide. There's always a divide in politics, the bipartisanship. The divide gets wider and wider every year. And if you notice with the Chicago Teachers Union, the president, Ms. Lewis, and our mayor, and it seems like every time they got together, there was a fight. Okay, they never got along, and it seemed so. Is this political? Is this personal, or is this let me be in front and let me? It's almost like saying, let me have the last say. What can you possibly do to bring those two entities or offices together in your administration?
Well, it's about understanding that our first responsibility from the standpoint of education is to what is best for those children. Yeah. What's happened is that it's become so overly politicized that we can't even have an objective discussion about good education policy because it's clouded by the politics and personalities that are involved. Yes. And we have to move away from that. If we have leadership that is focused on what is best for these kids, what can we do to work together so that our kids win out in the end, as opposed to what is politically expedient, or how can I get another notch, or how can I win this round of the fight, then we will start to see good education policy and practice implemented at all levels in the school district.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about safety. Okay, here in Chicago, as you know, we call Chirac, unfortunately. Yeah, it is unfortunate, and it puts a dark shadow on Chicago, even though the shootings are in strategic areas. Right. It doesn't represent the entire city. From January 1, 2013 to December 31, that's the entire year of last year, there were 2,185 shooting victims. Okay, but this year, from January 1 until today, it's 1,582 shooting victims. So which is a 600 difference here. So we see on the news McCarthy is that his name, who he applauds himself, he pats himself on the back for the numbers dropping, and I believe one death is one too many. Okay, but it's still a very high number of deaths. What is it that you can possibly do to work with the police department, work with the parents, because I think the parents has a lot had to do with this, to kind of curb a lot of this violence?
Well, the first thing that I do is I separate violence or crime reduction and policing. I think that they are two completely different things. Okay. One thing that we have not done is we have not made a concerted effort to get to the root cause of violence. For me, getting to the root cause of violence is a matter of investment. So when we invest in areas that we know we've not invested, the city has not invested for decades, and it's very easy to identify where those areas are because that's also where the most shootings are taking place. And so when we look at the number of schools that are closed, when you see the boarded up storefronts where there are no businesses, there's no business development. Right. When you see the vacant homes in those areas, those are all signs of disinvestment. So as a matter of policy, equity mandates that in those areas where we've not invested for decades, we actually have to put additional resources there intentionally to make sure that the small businesses can grow and develop in those areas, that their schools are open and fully funded, that people are able to afford to stay in their homes. We have to invest in a comprehensive workforce initiative so that those who are able to work can find work in areas of value in the economy. We have to invest in the programs for after school and over the summer for our young people so that they're not only being trained for work, but also have access to social and wraparound services that can help them address many of their needs, especially if they're living in conditions of poverty. These are the kinds of comprehensive investments that naturally reduce the rate of violence, because the question is not so much the person who, for example, the flow of guns into the community, because that's an issue. But it's what causes the mindset for someone to pick up a gun in the first place. And that, to me, is getting to the root cause of violence. Now, on the other side is this issue of policing. And so, to me, the solution is not just flooding a place with additional police. It's about what kind of relationship do those police officers have in the community? Do they even know the community that they're policing?
Right.
Are they trusted in the community? Is there accountability even within the police department so that a resident feels that if something happened, if there's a case of police brutality, that it will be swiftly and thoroughly dealt with within the police department? Right now, that's not the case.
Right.
And so you don't even have residents who trust that they can go to the police with information that might cause an offender to be caught or to be apprehended. So these are the issues with this militarization of our police training, the lack of accountability, the lack of diversity in the force. Those are core issues that need to be addressed if the police force is going to be more effective. Now, if you address those issues and you couple it with these necessary investments to naturally reduce violence, then you'll see the rates of crime decreasing across the board. And we won't have to have what the police department has been doing, which is manipulating statistics to make it look one way, which is different from the reality that we know in the community.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. We live here. We walk up and down the street. And if my son gets shot, then now he dies, unfortunately. Okay, then we get these statistics on TV saying the crime rate is down.
Right.
Well, tell that to that grieving mother who's at the funeral home right now.
Right.
That doesn't make her feel any better.
Right.
Do you think there's poor police training though? Because lately we've been seeing a lot of police brutality, not just here in Chicago but all over. But our neighboring brothers, which is in Indiana, okay, we've seen just outright disrespect. Okay, even when a man tries to show that he knows a little bit about the law, his boundaries of what he can go, but that is ignored. Okay, so is there just a fear from the police against, especially African Americans, the fear, or is it bad training?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think part of it is the stereotype, particularly of black men and young men in this country, that continues to be problematic. But on the training side, first and foremost, you have to see individuals in the community as human beings first.
Sure.
So you have to humanize them. Yeah. But when you're trained, and that's where I get to this militarized training, when you're trained to see individuals as suspects, then it guides your whole approach to that person. You treat them as a criminal first. And a lot of what happens in my neighborhood, for example, with the guys that I talk to, is that they're treated as criminals first and foremost by police before anything else. And so you have much more volatile circumstances where police brutality is often alleged. The other issue, again, is the accountability. So we'll hear from the department about, we have to get rid of the no snitching policy in the community. Well, within the police department, you also have to get rid of the no snitching policy, because how can the residents trust that anything that if there are complaints that are filed, that they will be carried forward if they know that no one is willing to carry the case forward? Sure. We just had a statistic that talked about over 10,000 complaints that were filed, police brutality complaints. And of that 10,000, 124 cases were actually pushed forward. So you can imagine the number of complaints that go unanswered. There's no response. And so for that reason, in addition to the training piece, we have to do, I think that IPRA has become ineffective in terms of really having an objective body that can hear and address the complaints that are filed against the police. It has to be a body that represents the community, where there's input that is independent, that can hear these cases, so that anyone who complains or who files a complaint isn't left for long periods of time and they don't hear anything in their cases, and even no one is looking at it. Those are the sorts of things that cause that distrust between the community and the police. And when that distrust is there, it makes it much harder for the police to do their job. And it also means that in the community, they're not going to see police as potential allies or a resource. They're always going to see them as a threat.
That's true. That is true. Employment here in Chicago. Okay. Chicago, Joliet, Naperville was one of the nation's 12 largest metropolitan statistically areas in August 2014. All of these areas experienced over the year job growth, with 6 exceeding or matching the national average of 1.8%. Now look at where we stand, though, here in employment. Top 3.9, Houston's at the top here. So we got Houston, Dallas, Miami, San Francisco, Atlanta, New York, Boston, Los Angeles, and we're down there at the bottom there, Chicago. And the only three that's behind us is Philadelphia, Washington, and Detroit. Okay, Detroit is too close to us. All right, not just geographically, but in this statistic. I don't want to be that close to Detroit as it pertains to jobs. Okay, they're 0.1 and we are 0.9. So the jobs status quo here. All right, what can you do?
Well, we have to make necessary investments in workforce training. One thing that we have not done, that the current administration hasn't done well, is tapping into those aspects of our economy that make us strong. So in key strategic sectors, manufacturing, IT, biomedical and health research, even in the trades, on the construction trades.
Sure.
What we need to focus on is that there are aspects in our economy where there are jobs indeed that are available. For example, the manufacturing sector. The issue is that we have not invested in creating a workforce pipeline into those jobs. And these are jobs that do not require a 4-year degree in many cases.
Absolutely.
All they require is a set of skills or certifications that you can obtain.
Right.
And so if we don't invest in getting individuals into those training programs, how can we expect to have that pipeline into those sectors? And therefore, they're not able to take advantage of jobs that are indeed available. So we can't say, for example, the current administration is focused on high tech. Well, that's great when you're attracting a Google or major headquarters here, but how does that move the bottom line in terms of jobs for individuals who currently live in the city of Chicago?
Yeah.
And we know that because we see it every day, the individuals that are standing outside in the corner that are able-bodied and could be working.
Yeah.
With these kinds of jobs that do not require a 4-year degree, that just require the training, we need to make sure that we're funneling them into those training programs so that they can be gainfully employed. That's what creates stability. That's what creates income. That's what reduces crime. That's what creates safer communities where people can now feel comfortable raising their children, sending their children to our schools. And so we have not made those kinds of workforce investments to really have a labor pool and a labor force that is trained and prepared for the realities of our economy.
And you're right there. And then when you were talking about that, the non-degreed, because I'm looking at the stat here, professional and business services. Okay, that's up there at the top. Construction is up there at the top. Leisure and hospitality. Okay, these are right a year into construction.
Correct.
Okay, and you understand. And they say that Chicago has 2 seasons. Is it? Is it winter and construction? Is it?
Exactly. Day and night. And we got plenty of work going on. It's just not enough people.
Not right. Sure. Yeah. And then where do those jobs go to?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's all political.
Absolutely. Are you union friendly?
I am.
Okay.
I am union friendly. I think that they have a key role historically in ensuring that people have good working environments, good working conditions, that they get paid what they're worth.
Right.
So I think the unions are important. But I also think that we need to think about how within the community and our ability to get more people into those unions so that they can get access to a lot of the jobs that are available only to union workers, for example.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a pension liability right now of $19.2 billion. Okay, the pension, we've been crying. I think that's how Quinn might have lost his office because of this. Have you focused on that?
Yes. I mean, part of the issue is that we can talk about rejiggering the formula or tweaking the pension formula all we want. But if we're not having a comprehensive conversation about our economy and how do we create a growth economy where people are making enough money to where they can save for their retirements, then we're essentially kicking the can down the road.
Yes.
We won't get to the heart of the issue.
Yes.
So our plan talks about how to shift, basically a paradigmatic shift in Chicago's economy to create individuals who are making more money where they can save for their retirement, where we won't have to depend so much so on a pension, which the city and state had not honored anyway.
That's true. Right. That is true. Where can we find you? Online, maybe? Possibly?
Online, www.amara4chicago.com. That's FOR Chicago. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the other social media. Everything is amara4chicago.com and amaraforchicago@gmail.com.
How you spell it, Amara?
AMARAFOR Chicago.
All right. Y'all heard it right here. listen, give her a chance. You've heard her speak. You've heard her defense. She has so much more. I know she's got more to say.
Yeah.
And
she got my vote.
All right, now you got one here in the room at least.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, Dion.
Alvin Carter says he
oh no, she top heavy right now, Doc. She's doing it.
I see it.
And so go to Spreaker.com for those of you who are listening now, and those of who didn't get a chance. You tell your friends and neighbors, go to Spreaker tonight.